Well, welcome everybody. I think we'll just get started here, and then as other folks join the meeting, hopefully they'll be able to know what's happening as they join. So you are in a Zoom meeting for a virtual workshop for the Downtown Riverfront Plaza project. It's phase 2 of our Downtown Riverfront Park project, and we're really happy to have you all here. My name's Emily Proudfoot, and I am the principal landscape architect in our parks planning office at the city, and also the project manager for both the Riverfront Park and Plaza projects. And I'm here tonight with, let's see here, 2 members of our team from Walker Macy Landscape Architects, who are the prime consultants for the design work for this project. They were also the design consultants for the Downtown Riverfront Park work. So we're really happy to have them on board to continue the design and bring their magic further along. It's really great. So Chelsea McCann is our principal in charge on the project, and then Jason King is the project manager from Walker Macy. With me also tonight is Alyssa Cavett, who is on our public outreach team for the city of Eugene, and she's been really great on getting all these little logistics set up for all of us. So I think from here, I will kick it off to our team. But again, we're really happy that you're here, and there's lots of good information to share. So if you have questions, you can put them into the chat. You can put them directly to me, and I'll do my best to answer them. And then if someone else should answer them, I'll let you know that too. But we'll also have pauses in the presentation tonight to give you time for question, answer, and discussion. So I think we'll have time for that as well. So you can type or you can talk, whatever you're comfortable with. So, all right, well, let's kick it off. I don't know who goes first, Jason or Chelsea, but anyway, thanks guys.
Share my screen and then Chelsea can take it away.
Perfect.
Sounds great. And while Jason is getting that set up, I will say that our design principal with Walker Macy, Lara Rose, is going to be joining us as well. She's having a little bit of login issues, but she should be here any minute, I hope. But I will kick it off, and then hopefully Lara's able to get in, and then she'll pick up partway through. Great. So anyway, with that, thank you everyone for taking the time out from your evening to come and join us today. I can no longer see any of you with the screen up. So normally I would ask how many of you have participated so far, but instead I'll just let you answer that for yourselves. We have been seeing at the in-person open houses, we saw a handful of folks who joined in both the first and second, as well as a lot of new faces who joined at the second open house for the first time to just see what was going on. So it's exciting and to have so many people interested and coming out to talk with us and give us their feedback. So why don't we go to the next slide? Jason, next slide. Oh, maybe I'm laggy. So first off, today we're going to go through a little bit of a recap of what we've heard so far, which for those of you who didn't participate in the open house, the first open house, it'll be an opportunity for you to hear what some other folks have been saying. We're going to talk about schedule. And then, of course, the most exciting part of our evening is going to be talking about design alternatives. And that's where we really want to get some feedback from all of you and kind of hear what you like and prefer with the couple of options we're going to go through today. We're also going to show you how events might be set up, some ideas around playground and style of play that we'd love some feedback on. And we have a really, really exciting interpretive design concept for the Plaza piece that we want to go through and have an opportunity to, or give you an opportunity to be able to have input on that and be able to provide us with some content that might be used for that piece. So we'll get to that in a moment. All right, so for those of you who may not have been, this might be your first time participating, we just wanted to really quick locate where we are in the city of Eugene. So this image that you see, this aerial of the city, you can see Alton Baker Park. across the river from our site. Our site is that green polygon there. This is a slightly older aerial, so the Riverwalk park that was newly constructed isn't built in this image, but it has been built. So try to think about that. And this new Park Plaza is going to be immediately adjacent to that. So it's sort of a central piece in this new development area where we're going to see some mixed use housing coming in. And this plaza is going to be sort of in the middle of that and touch and bump up against that Riverwalk. So as a means to recap, the open house ` was held in June, sort of late June. We had both an in-person open house in the city with about 40 folks attending. And then we also had a handful of folks join us the following week for a virtual open house that was sort of like this one. In those open houses, we talked about the previous design concept. So there had been a concept design that was developed in 2018. And so we talked about that with everyone since it had been a while since we discussed the plaza. We brought that up, reminded everyone where we left off, as well as some design changes that had occurred since then. We talked about the Riverfront Park, which had just opened. And so talked about sort of how this was going to dovetail with that and got some feedback, and seems like everyone's really liking the Riverfront so far. And then we also solicited feedback on what people would like to see in the new plaza. Again, we did a concept design back in 2018, but it's 4 years later, and what people might want to see here could have changed. So we asked a lot of questions. We asked people to provide feedback and gave some key prompts. We asked about, how much flexibility people want to see in the plaza space. Do they think the concept design that we were showing provided enough space for a variety of programming? We talked about balance between hard paved areas versus soft greenscape, and kind of what would people like to see, what felt right for this plaza design. And we also talked about safety and inclusivity. How do we make a space that's welcoming? And so we got a lot of feedback on all three of those questions, as well as just general feedback from the group. In general, there were some key takeaways that we heard. A lot of these were repeated by multiple folks. So one of them was that there was a strong desire for a water feature element, an interactive water feature, to be part of the plaza design, ideally something that celebrates the mill race. So that was kind of a key element that a lot of people were attracted to and would like to see in this space. We talked about, we got a lot of feedback around making sure that people had good access to the site, that it's easy to get to, easy to navigate and see, and visually transparent, so that people could see through the space and kind of see activity and feel welcome, that they can move in, kind of move in and through the space. We heard a lot about safety and security. Folks wanted to make sure it felt inclusive for everyone, and that we maintained views, and this was a space that was for people of all ages. So there would be elements within it that were attractive for everyone, whether those are families and small children, all the way up to adults who might just want to hang out here in the plaza and enjoy the views. We talked about flexibility, heard a lot about folks wanting a variety of events, and that was really critical. This place feel nice and flexible. We heard from people that they wanted a strong connection to the river, and that the park and the Riverfront Park and the new plaza should feel like a unified design. And then again, we heard it was important to have a play feature. So again, we want a space that's welcoming for all, and those kind of play features are really important for drawing families and kids and giving them a space to hang out and have a good time. Next. So I'm going to pause with that. That's kind of the background and where we are, and I'm going to just do a quick where we are in the time frame and in the schedule. So today we're at open house number 2, and last week we had the in-person version of this, and this is the online version. So we're basically right at a point where we're going to be presenting to you a couple of different design options that we want to get your feedback on. And with this information, we are going to develop a final concept design. So we're going to be taking all this information and using it to refine and get to a final plan that we think is reflective of the feedback and the input that we've been hearing from all of you in the community. And so that is going to be wrapped up then next month. Parallel to that, just so you're kind of tracking the different things that are happening, there will also be a portion of the work in this project going to an artist who will be developing a piece or maybe collection of pieces for the plaza. The artist selection is through a request for proposal process, an RFP process that did just open up and hit the streets, I think last week. And so we're in the process of selecting an artist. That artist should be selected around the same time that we're wrapping up our final concept design, which will be a great time because then they can be integrated into the team. We'll have a plan for them to look at, and then we can start thinking about how their art, whatever that might be, can be integrated into the landscape design. So that's where we are with that as well. So next. I think with that, we are hoping to talk design concepts. Lara, are you able to speak yet?
She
Lara's
can't hear
silent.
us, I think is the
Lara's-
problem.
Oh,
She can't hear us. And so,
and she just sent me a note telling me to proceed without her.
yes.
All right. Well, here we go, everyone. This is a little bit of flexibility. I'm going to step in for Lara, and then we'll have to figure out what's going on with our speakers another time. Design concepts. So we want to present to you two different design concepts that we've been working on that in terms of programmatic elements, they are very similar, but as far as how the design concepts were articulated, that's where things are a little bit different. So the Headwaters site plan is a concept that really takes into account sort of the directionality from the neighborhood and the district and sort of draws people into the space that you can see through these long bands that sort of stretch from ferry down toward the river. In this concept, you are welcomed at the ferry street if you enter from the west. You are welcomed by these bands of trees and that draw you into the site with sort of bench seating around them that you can sit and enjoy the shade of this grove. As you move into the site, we have a water feature, and this is kind of where the name of this concept comes from. It's inspired by the idea of sort of a natural stream that starts at the headwaters, which is often up in the higher points, up in the mountains, where it's sort of starts small and starts coming out of the rock, and you see it sort of collect and gather sort of momentum as it moves down the mountains toward the valleys. And so in this idea, this water feature would start toward the southwest, kind of up near the building that's lot 9, and start to gather steam maybe as sort of a flowing stream through these big blocks of rock and stone as it moves through the space and eventually sort of pulls up at this splash pit play and eventually kind of leads you visually toward the river itself. So it's this idea of the headwaters moving toward the river. And so part of it is this calm area where maybe adults want to enjoy it. And then as you move toward the south, you have more splash play that's more kind of tends to draw more children who want to play through that when it's on. We have kind of lovely garden spaces up toward the ferry side. And then as you move into the park, the idea here is that it's a large open plaza with a level event lawn space. And so, you know, in a non-program day, the water feature would be on, there would be lots of activity through there. But when you're having an event, you can use both the plaza area and the event lawn as kind of event space. So you end up with a really maximized event area in this concept. As you slide down toward the southeast, then you see there's a play area located in that portion of the site that might, again, in this case, it's articulated as kind of a nature play element, maybe using natural materials, wood and stone for climbing and play throughout that. But we will get to some play concepts in a moment. Overall, you can see this concept dovetails nicely with the existing river walk, and it all sort of works together as one fluid space. Go to the next. This is an aerial view of that concept, so you can see it in relation to the river walk and sort of how that open plaza sits within the site. And you can imagine this being programmed as really an active kind of space that can sort of be utilized for all sorts of events. Next. This is an image standing with ferry behind you looking toward the river. You can see some of those planters that are in those long bands in the grove and seating areas next to them. And then you can also get a glimpse of that kind of headwaters idea of stone with water, with kind of this cascading water through it, and then ultimately resulting in a splash pad down to as you move closer to the river. Next. All right, our second design concept we call river flow. And so the idea here was to, where the other one felt a little more urban with some of those directional grove and those sort of elements. This one is a little bit softer with more curvilinear form. The idea here, in this case, we still have a grove up towards ferry, but rather than being bands of trees inviting you in, they may be placed more as clusters with elevated seat walls around the edges and maybe movable tables and chairs. As you move into the space, the water feature in this concept is the idea of doing something really at grade. So instead of having the rock that we did in the headwaters, this might be more at grade, something that kids and adults could kick off their shoes and easily walk through, just something small and calm on the ferry side. But then we moved the splash play element a little bit further to the southeast. So it's immediately adjacent to the play area. So there's a little bit, you notice there's a little bit more of a separation between the calmer portion of the water feature and the more active splash play in this concept, and that adjacency to the play area. In addition to that, in this case, the lawn area that we have is more of a mounded lawn, which makes it not as easy to set up some activities like booths, but on the other hand, could be great for sort of seating if you were watching an event that was happening in the plaza. And creates a little more visual interest by having a low mound in that area. We again have a large open plaza that would be programmable for different kinds of events, and a play area down here. In this case, we articulated something that was maybe a little more artful. And then you can see the sort of flow of some of the pathways that are on the Riverwalk are extending up into the plaza, which really links these two concepts in terms of form together. This is that image again, sort of as we're hovering over the river, looking back toward the plaza, and you can see that arcing path near the existing overlook, sort of swooping up and creating the edge of that lawn in the plaza. You can see that grove in the distance. Next. Again, this is an image with ferry behind us looking toward the river. So you can see those elevated planters with the tree clusters, and then that idea of more movable tables and chairs that can be moved around the site and tucked into these sort of little nooks along those planters. And what we see in the foreground is really that calmer portion of the water feature, that area that you could maybe walk through, get your feet wet, and the splash pad with the vertical jets and kind of more active is a little bit further in the distance. Next. All right. So one is, I don't know, maybe we should pause here. Does that sound all right? Let's pause. So would love to hear, I don't know if we have questions. Do people have the power to unmute themselves? this
I think so.
meeting?
I think so.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
This is Jack Blackham.
Hello.
I'm the floodplain manager for the city, but this is the
I
first time
thought so.
I'm here.
Welcome.
I've been trying to, find a time to come and look, but this is the first opportunity I've had. What kind of are these going to be deciduous trees? I certainly like the idea of a larger canopy cover. When I was down there for the Riverfront Festival, I mean, it's kind of hard to imagine right now because it's so open and there are no buildings. And so presumably this is facing north, right? So on the other side of Ferry, there would be a building kind of casting a shadow, and on lot 9, that building. So would this be would this plaza have quite a bit of direct sunlight for most of the day?
So we will be getting shade off of lot 9.
Okay, yeah, right.
Right. Yeah, but we don't know at this point, they haven't fully designed it, so we only have sort of a concept of what that building mass will look like. But presumably we will have a fairly sunny plaza area. So that is something that we want to take into consideration. And I think you opened with, are these trees deciduous? And the answer to that is we don't know yet.
Well, that's a good, because my follow-up was what my wife works at urban forestry, and I was wondering what urban forest. We're a civically engaged family here.
You're so awesome.
And so just wondering, what kind of trees were being thought of for this, but obviously it's early in the design stages. So
yeah, we're a little early days for that kind of level of specificity, but we will get there. And ultimately what we want to create is we want to think about what kind of trees are going to be appropriate and where to create a really welcoming experience year round. And so there are times a year when we want shade, other times we want sun. We're all Oregonians, we know how that goes. So those will be things that we'll need to think through.
And thanks. Yeah. And then the last question I had was kind of, although there is on both concepts have a splash design kind of at the lower end, downstream end, if you will. It looked like those other upstream things are still designed for people to be in, kids, adults, and the like. Okay.
Yeah, the idea is in both concepts is that the portion of the water feature that's closer to, so it's technically one water feature. We may be able to program it so certain parts can be shut off while other parts remain functional, depending on events and things like that. That's a technical level we haven't gotten to. But the idea was that the portion of the water feature that's closer to Ferry in both concepts was maybe a little bit more appealing for all ages, like where adults might be comfortable getting into it and don't feel like they're going to get drenched, unless you want to. And then as you move closer to the river end, which in the headwaters concept isn't quite as far toward the river as in this one, the river flow. That would be more like vertical play elements that can be turned on that really get you wet. And those are the kind of water features that tend to attract children and kids who really want to get soaked. And other folks just like to sit back and look at those ones. But we want to create an opportunity that kind of appeals to everybody. Where if you want to cool off and you want to get a little bit wet, you can pick how wet you want to be. So.
Yeah, very cool. I guess the last thing I would say is just from a personal resident standpoint, it's nice to have, it is generally flat down. I mean, it's nice down once you're on the boardwalk to look down, but I tend to like the little bit of relief that a mound would provide, topographical relief. So especially on that image right there, it looks like it would be a steeper bank back towards the building. And so the open face would be more towards the river, more surface area.
Yeah, we want to kind of maximize that seating on the river side, or that slope on the river side where people would want to sit and get kind of up a little bit and see the river and watch the action.
Great. Well, thanks so much. That's kind of
Absolutely.
everything I had.
Thank you. Donald, I saw you unmute yourself. Would you like to go?
Did you say Donald?
Yeah,
Yes.
isn't that what it says? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
you.
I'm unmuted, right?
You
Yes.
are.
Okay, yeah, great. Yeah, to add to that comment, I'm Don Strout and Nancy Strout. We're just participants in the program, love the architecture and design and the people involved. The last comment from the gentleman, I did go to the festival, and the first thing I noticed how bright it was and how hot it is, or was too. Of course, there's nothing else around there. But I'm thinking global warming, is this something we have to consider? Will it get hotter and brighter in that area? Do we need to up step some things to kind of cover from more excessive heat? And I think the last question I always have is every time I go down there, I hear that freight train blow that horn. I know there's no solution. But how do you get
Well,
around it?
there is a solution. I could tackle the quiet zone quickly, Donald. We are working with the railroad and have been for a long time to establish a railroad quiet zone. And it's very much a design issue where, every movement of pedestrian or a car or, a cyclist, whatever, that movement is super controlled by all these different things. And we've had a really hard time actually working with the railroad to figure out the design of these things. And there was an article in the Guard recently, I think Megan actually wrote it, that also talked about some ongoing concerns with the maintenance of these facilities. So it's an ongoing process, but ideally we will have a railroad quiet zone. That is the idea. So that's that. It's just taking longer than we expected. You want to tackle the other one, Chelsea or Laura?
Sure. When it comes to climate change and global warming, that is something that we always need to be considering in terms of the kinds of spaces that we're creating opportunities for shade and relief, and thinking through ultimately what kind of plant materials we're going to be putting out here and what's going to survive in the long run, and kind of thinking ahead with those kind of lens in mind. There may be, we may want to talk about additional shade elements, but some of those might be temporary. Those may be things that come up seasonally, and those kind of, those ideas that we could talk through with the city as far as how we set up the space and how they manage it over time. But I think I don't have an answer of exactly how that plays out at this stage in the design concept, but it is a lens that we need to be applying as we think about it.
Yeah, you know what? There's one other question towards that issue on heat and so forth. If it's areas where kids are going to be playing or walking in water, on the area that it has the hard surface, will that be cool enough for kids to walk on or adults to walk on? I don't know how you would solve it, but
So I'm sorry, Don.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm just very curious what you can do about that, or you can.
Yeah, a lot of what we do is we think about the color. A lot of it comes down to the color of the paving and sort of the reflectivity. Choosing materials that are lighter in color to, reflect the sunlight and ultimately don't absorb as much heat, so you don't end up with the hot. We won't want to end up here with something really dark like asphalt, where you have, that's a very extreme option. But that's not something that we want to do, because those darker materials, of course, absorb that heat and become exceedingly hot in those kind of conditions. In addition to that, we want to think through level of shade that gets placed on those, especially in those hottest times of year in July and August, and kind of where those shade footprints are and how that relates to zones where we might be thinking people might be barefoot and running around in particular, and making sure those get a little bit of shade on them, which will provide that relief and avoid those hot toe situations.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
I have some comments from Rebecca. So she says that Let's go back here. She thinks that tree clusters would be more functional in terms of shade and coolness than individual trees. And then wonders if the tree clusters could be combined with, like, through the center of the headwaters coming through them. So kind of combining the water and the trees a little bit more, echoing Jason's concerns and thoughts around coolness, which I think we're all talking about here and reflecting. She also likes the idea of having the splash pool further away from the children's play area, because adults gain a lot from enjoying the play of children, and having children's laughter and joy is really a good idea. So those were her comments.
All right, those are great. That's great feedback.
Yeah.
And I think, the idea of melding concepts together, I don't know where we're going to land at this point, but that's what our design refinement will be about. So, that's great feedback to hear and hear what people are thinking and how they're reacting to the concepts.
Well, if I can add one more note just to hopscotch on Rebecca's there, is that this concept right here almost provides a microcosm of a riparian zone, if you will, because it has trees on both sides of the water, which is kind of nice to have that.
Nice. You are the floodplain manager, right? So that
It's our
is
new
true.
floodplain manager. Great.
So you have that lens, and that's an interesting observation. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Let's get trees, roots.
Are there any other thoughts from folks? All right, let's move forward, and why don't we talk about just kind of a glimpse at event setup. So when we think about events for this space, we think about it not just in terms of kind of three areas able to work together. So we of course have the plaza, which is what we're talking about today. There's also the area of Fifth on the other side of lot 8. So that's that portion of Fifth that was recently developed and kind of comes down to the waterfront. That area was designed to support events such as like farmers market type booth events, craft markets, those sort of things. And then in addition to that, we also have the Riverwalk itself, which, as those of you who have been out for the recent festival saw, that there can also be events hosted along the Riverwalk. So with those three areas potentially working together, it gives us the opportunity to think of different events at different scales. And not every event will use all three of those spaces. Some may be smaller and only use a portion. Others may be large and want to use all three. Right now, we have a few diagrams based on where we are now. But as we refine the design concept, we're going to keep testing different types of events and sort of different ways that they could be set up. And that's going to help us inform us through the design and development process to understand where infrastructure needs to go. So that the ultimate design is very flexible and will allow for lots of different kinds of events to get set up in different configurations. So these are just a sampling and not, the ultimate end all, but it just does give an idea of how events could set up. So for like a small event, such as a movie night where we're putting up a screen, this might be an event that only occupies the plaza. So the Riverwalk is open, people can pass by, Fifth is open, and really people are gathering. Maybe they're sitting on the lawn watching a movie. You might have some vendors and portable restrooms set up, and it's just a very simple, small event for like a one evening with great opportunity for people to come down to the river and hang out. The next one. In a medium event, we might consider using the plaza as well as Fifth. So you can start to take advantage of the booth and vendor setup that's already built into Fifth. You might be able to provide, set up some of those activities there. And then in the plaza itself, you could have an area with a stage set up, maybe a dance floor, so you could have music and folks for people to gather, areas for people to, again, sit on the lawn and use that as audience space, and maybe other activity booths or event areas throughout the plaza. And finally, if you're doing a really large event, which you all just witnessed down there, you might want to take advantage of all three areas. In this case, in the first two, we weren't suggesting using the Riverwalk, so that allows that Riverwalk traffic to kind of keep going through for the cyclists and the walkers and everyone who are using the Riverwalk. But for a very large event, the city may choose to close off a portion of the Riverwalk for bikes who could be rerouted up into the district and use the streets to kind of bypass it during those couple of days when there's a big event. And in this case, then you could have a stage set up under the Riverwalk canopy sub supra. You could have another stage even if you wanted to in the plaza, if you want to have multiple events going on at once. You can again use that vendor space and fifth and have lots of different kinds of activity areas within the plaza itself. So again, these are just kind of test fits and starting to think about different kinds of events. And as we develop the design and as we refine it, we would be studying these in more detail so that again, we can understand where the infrastructure needs to be to support different kinds of activities. Next. One of the other elements that we've been thinking about and would love your feedback on is options for play spaces. So we know we're going to have a play area. We're excited about that. But of course, the play could be designed and developed in a lot of different ways. So these are just sort of themes and would love your thoughts on what you think is most appropriate for your kids. So put your 5 to 12-year-old hats on, 2 to 12-year-old hats on. And imagine what would be the most appealing for as a kid or on behalf of the children in your lives. So first is a nature-inspired play area. Now this, the idea here is that it would be a playground that would use natural materials such as wood, stone, or naturally themed structures. So there's still all the climbing and playing and all that kind of fun rowdiness that comes with a playground, but it's really made out of those natural materials. So so that's the first option. The second option that you see in the second bar on this image, we dubbed it topography, and this is a concept that we're seeing a lot lately, and it gains a lot of attention from kids, where potentially we create a more sculptural form throughout the site using colorful play surfacing. It's really bright and attractive and sort of more sculptural play elements that kids can kind of climb on, slides, all those kind of things, but it's integrated into this sort of topography themed context. And then the last one that we were looking at was more of what we just called here a custom theme. These are very sculptural elements. There are play feature designers that we could work with that do only custom work, so you don't get anything off the shelf. you get something that's really designed and themed to Eugene. They all of these examples are wood, but made with really colorful stains and things to make them bright and poppy and kind of attractive. And as you can see, they can all be themed to be fun climbing and exploratory elements that would be tied to you and to your park. So maybe we pause there again before we talk interpretive and get some feedback on those elements, on events, thoughts around events, as well as thoughts around play.
Yeah, I have a comment. I found when kids see the same thing over and over again, they get a little tired of seeing it. So I think the more abstract, or maybe even modular, so you can shift things around, I think that refreshes the environment. I don't know how much maintenance or how more expensive it would be, but something asymmetrical, abstract. When you go there, you see something different every time. Maybe you didn't see it before, but when you see an object, there's one Cabela Senior Center just down there. It's a whale, really nice little sculpture, and I see they repainted it, but I see absolutely nobody, no kids on it. And so I don't know. You really have an open area. I think any of these would work. but abstract, maybe modular.
All right, great. Anyone else have thoughts? No?
Well, John
Sounds
said
good.
that they like the nature inspired option, but the topography one is really cool too. So maybe you can do both-ish.
Maybe we can.
Yeah,
Good,
I
good
just think those
feedback.
are great. Yeah, that's great feedback.
How big is like, do you have a general size, area, square footage? Are we talking 10,000 square feet, 5,000, 1,000? I mean,
Jason or Lyle, do you have that number in your
Yeah,
head?
hi everyone. I'm gonna weigh in here. I think it's very small. Sorry, my technology was not working well earlier, so I couldn't contribute. I want to say it's more like a 2,000 square foot play area. Does that sound possible, Jason?
Mhm.
Maybe find out some vertical.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's,
I was just
It's
wondering,
small.
it's kind of hard
Yeah.
to have a hill, like
It's-
a major topographical hill plus nature column, or something similar to the columns like on Skinner View, plus whatever else in that limited area.
Yeah, it's definitely a small zone, and I think we're going to have to be really thoughtful about kind of utilizing the edges of the space, and thinking about how to create kind of fun, different ways kids can explore. But it is certainly not a huge play area as play areas go. I'm sure Eugene has some larger ones, and that's part of the rationale for the water feature. That there's like different types of play here in this space.
Say,
with-
oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, with that in mind, I would be in favor of more of a custom theme if it's quality over quantity, I suppose, for me.
That's great feedback.
Since there's a water feature, I know you guys can't touch the river. It has under a different jurisdiction, but it'd be nice to somehow, I don't know how you can include the science center or something like that. You can include some kind of feature that represents maybe hydraulics, how things are created through river flow, water flow, and add that might be intriguing. I don't know.
That's
Or
a
how
great
you would do, or how you would do it.
Yeah, that could be a really fun theme. Sure. All right,
Because
other, yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead. Sorry, Don.
To add to that, what brought my attention is one of the parks around here, they have a little hand pump. You pump water out, it goes down. It's just amazing how intrigued the kids are with that. They're just pumping water and making sandcastles and little rivers and whatever.
Which park are you talking about?
McKinsey has, I think it's a McKinsey Park over off McKinsey and Colbert. I think that's the name of it. But they have a little stainless steel pump,
Yeah,
very
Yeah.
generic, and then some other
Yeah.
little features that show sand and water and those
Yeah.
relationships.
we have a few of them and they're really fun and they're really popular.
Very
Yeah.
popular, yeah. Oh, hey, one question I do have is not necessarily about this, but as far as access, getting these areas, I think in one of the meetings, someone mentioned kayaking. Where in the heck does someone hit the beach with a kayak to get into this park? Is that possible?
It is. So we do have in the first phase of our project that's now open. If you go down to the eWeb, the old eWeb area where the little fountain is there, and you sort of step down to that overlook area down to the left, we cut a little gate in there and put some sun steps, and there's some kayak tie-ups. Now they're kind of hidden in there. They're like,
Oh, yeah, really?
they're
Okay.
not highly prominent, but we heard a lot of requests for wanting to kind of get to the water and figure out how to get in and out of the water. And so we did our best to accommodate that. We weren't working below ordinary high water. So they're a little, kind of tucked back there. They're not very obvious, but they do exist. So we've done our best, but mostly we're really looking for folks to access the water, I think, in the future across the river at Altenbaker Park. So.
Yeah, wow, what a challenge.
Well, and it's a slow side, so it's a little easier. But I think our master planning for Altenbaker, which will happen in the next year or two, will definitely incorporate that sort of access.
Cool.
All right. Well, if there aren't any more questions or comments on this, then I think we can go into the interpretive.
I just have one more comment from Rebecca,
yeah.
which is that
Great.
she likes the idea of science and play with the water pump and sand option. So that's
Awesome.
She's into that. Yeah, it is really fun. It's really good.
Nice. All right. So interpretive storytelling. If you've been out to the Riverwalk, you may have seen that there are a number of bronze features that have been installed that are the interpretive elements. Some of them are still under construction, and so that aspect will continue to grow. And then here in the plaza, we're hoping to do another one that will work within that family of interpretive pieces so that there's a lot of different stories and threads that you can learn from. In terms of what's out there today, if you go out near the steam plant, hopefully you saw the gear in the overlook that emits mist. It looks like steam and energy, and it's themed around that industrial aspect of the riverfront. You would also see these beautiful bronze ribbons that are in that kind of middle photo there. And these are part of a series on sort of river themes. So there are a number of things just around the river itself. There will be interpretive panels around the braided river and kind of some of the flow in that space as well. While those pieces are in the pavement now, there are additional elements that are still under fabrication that aren't out there yet that actually have the interpretive content on there. So I hope you keep going to the riverfront and checking those out, because those will come in. And then, of course, we also have another theme around culture and community. Do we have another slide for that? Maybe? No, we do not. So sorry, I'm doing a presentation on a section I haven't done before. So so the third one is around culture. You can see it actually here on the left-hand side, this element of this bronze drinking fountain that's going to be coming in. It's going to be right at near the DeFazio Bridge, and looking across the way at the area where the African American community used to reside over there on the Alton Baker Park side. And it is this element of a drinking fountain with an interpretive piece and story around that community. So we're really looking forward to that piece as well. And again, that is under fabrication right now. So hopefully this winter and maybe a little bit into spring, we'll see those final pieces come together, and those will all be placed along the riverfront. But for this project, our final interpretive storytelling piece, we want to be themed on the mill race. So we are working with a team called Story Space, and they are Jill Ann Holt and Susan Mavor, who work together as kind of bring together their interpretive and artistic talents to come up with all of these pieces. And they've already been starting to do a bit of research on the mill race. The idea with this interpretive piece is because the mill race was such an important feature within the city, it is something that we have found a lot of people, particularly people who've been in Eugene for some time, have a lot of stories about the mill race and about their interactions with it over time. And there are a lot of historical stories around it. And so the idea would be to gather both historical as well as historical stories that we find in the archives, as well as stories that we hear from those of you in the community, and bring those together to be able to sort of bring that text and those stories together as something that people can engage with. In some of the stories already, I think Susan said, they came across stories about like that back in the late 1800s, there was a circus came to town and they let the elephants out and they went into the mill race to cool off, and then nobody could get the elephants back out of the mill race. So there are all these fun, wonderful little gems that we can pull together. But what we want to do is solicit input from all of you. We have a postcard campaign that we've just started with these wonderful images of the mill race, where we're asking people to tell us stories about your experiences with the mill race or the river, your memories of it, or your thoughts about it. And it could be about anything. It doesn't have to be specifically the mill race. It could be about the river and just your interaction with that. And we will be collecting these and then using them to sort of tell these stories in the plaza. And we have physical postcards, and then you can also do this online on the city website. So there's an opportunity to do it there if you just want to type it up. But if you want to handwrite it, I don't know, Emily, we're in a virtual meeting right now, but
We are, and I think we have a big box of postcards left over. So we'll be dropping them off at the Campbell Senior Center and at the library and a variety of probably the Lane County Historical Museum, a few places like that, just so you can pick up a card, and they're pre-postage paid. So you can just write your story on the back and drop it in the mail without even putting a stamp on it. So look for those, or you can just fill out we have a little storytelling module within our website, and you can just tell a story about, when you're on the mill race anytime.
So how's the stories going to be presented in
thank you for
It's a good question.
teeing that up, Dawn. Let me tell
know.
you.
He's good at this.
So, so we want to take these stories. We want to take all of this research and these input that we're getting from the community and thoughts, and that the idea would be that becomes words in the pavement and would be integrated into this water feature, this sort of big movement that, this kind of feature that we have in the paving here in the plaza. The idea in some of these images, it could be engraved concrete, it could be bronze, recessed bronze, or maybe some of them are even elevated, sort of to tie it into some of those other interpretive elements that we see out in the water along the Riverwalk. But the idea would be that all of that text, those stories get sort of documented with different, it might include different kinds of handwriting and different ways to describe it so that it gets this really nice sort of texture to it and it feels very personal. So our interpretive team has been thinking about, how this might be articulated depending on what kind of water feature we end up with. And again, these are just concepts at this moment in time. But if we were to do something like the headwaters, as you can see here, the idea might be that how those stories get written out might be a little more orthogonal and maybe more geometric in the layout and be placed in the bottom of those water features as something you can look down into the water and see the stories and kind of read those. So there's kind of an enlargement of that idea of that text coming forward. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a comment on that. In one of the parks, the library put up these series of stories. I think they're little story boards on children's stories, beautiful graphics, nice framing and so forth, except the fonts were so small, you'd almost have to get down 2 inches away to read the whole story. I know there's a lot of theory and reading type and so forth, but one of the best theories is how they build billboards. You have to read that message in 7 seconds or something like that when you're driving by. Most people like short bylines than extensive copy, unless you just link it to some kind of internet site for more information. But yeah, keep it simple. But artistically, what I saw there looks pretty cool.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point, and that is why we have Susan on our team. She is really good at getting those texts down to things that are digestible and quick, and but also will kind of pull for that artful quality that if you don't want to read it, it still looks amazing. If you do want to stop and read it, you can enjoy something really, you can kind of absorb the content fairly quickly. but this was just then an interpretation of if we were doing the river flow concept, the ultimate design might be a little more sinuous. It might be less sort of rigid in how it lays out. And again, these are just initial first concepts, and this will all get refined along with the design. But this is the idea.
Now, would it be, would the type be raised or recessed into
that's a
the
good question.
rods?
It is a good question. I think that as Susan has spoken about it now, that's a little bit up in the air. It could be recessed and the water would flow over it. It might create a ripple effect. There could be points when text gets raised up and they become, letters become stepping stones, sort of thing. So I think that's all sort of aspects that we need to think through as we refine the design and how that's going to work.
Yeah, if it's in dry areas, some people like on the sewer tops, they like to take tracings of it. That would be something
yeah.
that might be interesting.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought for sure. All right, so there we are. That was our presentation. Do we want to end this and maybe see everyone's faces and see what other questions or feedback folks have?
We had one more comment from Becky regarding the play area, and she thought that maybe we should talk with the Science Museum and see what other science play projects that they might recommend. And I know that museum playgrounds are so engaging. So I think, just considering, that type of opportunity potentially is a really good idea.
That's a great idea. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just wanted to throw up the last slide. As mentioned, everything's online, both a survey so you can give additional comments on any of these schemes, and then the mill race stories, the online version of that is available as well at Engage Eugene if you Google that, or the link on the screen.
Yeah, and we definitely encourage you to take the survey. It allows you to kind of dig into a little more detail and compare and contrast different elements within the design concepts. And you can also, have opportunity to type out additional comments that come to mind. And so it would be great if you can take the time to participate and maybe share it with friends and other folks who would be interested in giving some feedback as well. That would be wonderful. Do we want to see each other's faces again? There they are. Hello.
Hello.
So does anyone have any more questions or comments? We've still got a good solid half an hour if you want to use it.
All I can say, great job. Just keep it up.
Thank you. I'm pretty quiet.
Okay, comments. Let's see what outline. What can we say? Okay. Well, I think there's always some things that drive people to these centers. It can be looking at water, it could be play areas, or just a break, being in shade, looking at other architecture. I noticed the larger buildings around that area. I hope they don't do anything like mirrors, so it reflects sun in there. Of course, they will do that. But it's a careful balance, and I'm sure you're working with everybody, architects and future concepts and so forth. So it just evolves. And so these projects you hear where oh my God, we missed something, so they have to backtrack and kind of solve it. So I think so far so good. The one thing that walking along the walkway, I love that little line running through the walkway and so forth. And I thought maybe this lights up at night. No, I know it didn't. That's a bronze and metal, but that would have been kind of cool to see kind of I don't know how you do it, some kind of material. I think I saw something in Paris where they had plexiglass embedded in the ground. It was really interesting at this museum. The other thing, hydraulics, I keep thinking, water, that river is so important. How do you represent that? More so, how do you demonstrate, especially to the younger generation, how, there's water flowing, but that flowing water upstream is doing something, generating electricity. Fish are going up the stream. It'd be great to see what that's all about, interpretation. maybe artistically, maybe through the art you're doing, so forth. Configurations, I can see some of those shapes look like fish in the ground from top view. So it's a challenge. That's all I can say. Good challenge.
Now, there's lots of opportunity for creativity and kind of figuring out those details that really, tie the space together and bring the theme to life. And I think that's going to be coming in these next stages of design once we get the concept, the overarching concepts are settled. And we get
Yeah,
to
like a
dig
big
into all that.
Lego set, just put all the
Yeah.
parts together. Here, there.
Yeah, you got to build the core first, and then you can you
Yeah,
can
true. Very
fit
true.
it out. So thank you. That's great, Dawn. Are there any other comments or thoughts from folks? Oh, you guys are very
Tell you what,
quiet.
let me go
Yeah.
next door to my neighbor, get a comment. I'll be right back.
Well, if there are no other comments, I think we can probably safely give you a bit of your evening back. So you don't have to stay on until 7. But again, please do participate in that survey. And if you have a story to tell about the mill race or the waterfront or anything you want to share, please do. We're really just looking for those great tidbits that sort of personalize this space for your community.
Thanks everyone for being here, and thanks Walker Macy for your awesome information sharing. Yeah, the survey will be open, I believe, until August 27th, which is the end of next week. And so tell all your friends, because it's a really cool survey and it has really good pictures. It's better than usual.
Yeah.
And we love hearing from folks. I think we've just as engaged as folks were here this evening. It was a little hard because it wasn't too much in the whole public chat, but folks are really engaged in the design and in the details, and that's been really helpful for all of us just to gauge support for different ideas and all of that. So encourage you to continue sharing that information with us. So thanks again for being here. Really appreciate it.